You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Inside the Black and Gold. I'm Brendan YSL.
Sam Jane.
And Michael Howes, and this week we have on former Terps quarterback and legendary quarterback from Maryland, Scott McBrien.
Before we get back to the show, a quick word from our sponsor. The Catalyst to the Game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry-aged Black Angus all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings including hot onions, relish, and their signature chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Those sound pretty good. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns because Catalyst has food for everyone. Find them in SAQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich.
Our next guest is former Maryland quarterback and multiple bowl-winning quarterback at the University of Maryland, Scott McBrien. Scott, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
How are you doing today? What you been up to recently?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Fall's kind of slowing down here for me anyway. Had a big youth football season for my kids, for my son. So didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. Tough loss in the playoffs and overtime, but we had a great year, and it's nice to kind of sit back and take a deep breath. Really enjoy some college football now.
Did you say you're coaching that team?
I am coaching the team. Yeah, I coach 8U at Maplewood here in Bethesda, and we had a great year, so it was fun all around.
Awesome. That's great. But like you said, now you've got the time to watch some college football, so let's talk some Maryland football now. What have you seen from the Terps recently?
Recently, a lot of ugly recently. Obviously early on it started great, with those few wins early on in the season. But, you get into league play. And like I said the other day, league play, man, there's no cupcake in the Big Ten. There's just not. I don't care how good, how bad your record is. There's never a cupcake. And it's a battle every single week. Winning is hard at that level. It really is. And it's got to start from the training staff to, the chefs in the kitchen to obviously all the way up to the head coach. And, it's not an easy job. And obviously the Terps have struggled lately winning games. But, there's good pieces and there's not so good pieces, right? And it's a matter of, trying to figure out a way to finish strong and figuring out a way to come out on top here at the end of the season.
One thing that we obviously saw happen is after the Washington game, after the second half kind of collapsed, the team really hasn't looked the same. What do you think kind of leads to some of that unraveling?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know. Every locker room's different, guys. Obviously I'm not behind the closed doors. I don't know kind of what's going on inside those locker rooms, inside the meeting rooms. Obviously, when you have a heartbreaking loss like that, right, you were so close. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is Maryland's like 5 total minutes away from being 7-0. Like, think about it, right? If you don't let those fourth quarter leads slip, right, you're having a really good season. And it was kind of that gray line of you could have gone either way. I think Maryland's right now struggling, trying to find what their identity is in November, right? Trying to figure out which direction to head here. They've only won a handful of games, but they've been really close to winning a lot of football games. And as you can see, like, Maryland's got the talent. I mean, Terps have got the dudes on the field. It's just about finding a way to come together as a team and pushing through and getting those W's, especially in the fourth quarter. And I don't know where that comes from, right? I mean, a lot of good players, a lot of players have done some really solid things, and we've seen it this year, but it just hasn't been consistent, right? But I think a dagger loss like that Washington loss, right? The locker room kind of starts to lose a little bit of confidence, right? You go into the next week and you lose, same situation, right? And it just kind of snowballs from there. And now you're at the point where, I mean, shoot, do we even want to go to a bowl game, right? Where do we stand? Do we want to continue to fight? Do we want to continue to, go to meetings and go out to practice and give it our all, right? Do we want to be home for Christmas? So these are all the questions that kind of go through your mind as, the season kind of unravels here. And for better or for worse, it's just been an ugly, last few weeks. And, I really do believe that, Locksley's trying to put these guys into position to succeed and finish strong. And, hopefully they do.
Obviously, one of the big storylines heading into this year was the quarterback, Malik Washington. And what we've seen from him so far, I think it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I think the past 2 weeks we've seen some of that freshman quarterback come out from him, where maybe early on in the year and some of those early conference losses, he looked a lot better. And what have you seen from Malik so far?
Well, I've seen a lot of good, especially from a young kid. I played as a freshman, not as a true freshman. I played as a redshirt freshman, and it was really hard for me. And I didn't have the expectations that he has, right? The bar was not set as high as his bar is set. He's a young kid. He's played at a high level for a long time, right? And he gets thrown into the fire. And we've seen the kind of player that he can be. We've seen the kind of throws that he can make, and he's made them. Is he consistent? No, but he's a freshman, right? And he's playing in a big time conference, right? He's not playing JUCO ball by any means. He's playing on national television against big time football powerhouses, and he's executing, right? Is he executing at the level that we all want him to execute? No. Sometimes he is, yeah, for sure. But I think we got to cut the kid some slack. He's only going to get better, and I've seen him get better through the weeks. Are we winning football games? No, we're not. But I see him I see him making some really good decisions and really good throws. Are there mistakes? Yeah, of course there are. But he's only been in College Park for a few months, right? So I think we have to cut him some slack there. I'm excited with kind of where he's going, right? That trajectory is straight up. And look, if there were W's in that column, we wouldn't really be talking about Malik, right? So you got to kind of have to think about it both ways. As a true freshman quarterback, he's all we want. And I'm excited for kind of what he's going to do down the road.
Another thing I think we've seen from Malik literally off the field is just his leadership and also the difficulties of doing that at such a young age and, in his first year in college. Have you been impressed by, just his composure in press conferences and on the field?
Guys, I was impressed with him in high school, right? I mean, when he was a sophomore, I was impressed with him. But yeah, I mean, his off the field stuff, you can't teach that, right? Does it start at home? Yeah. But does it carry over into a college environment when parents aren't overseeing him and overlooking his shoulder? Sometimes it doesn't, but for him, it does, right? And he really wants to do good in the community. He wants to give back. He wants to be that player, that better player off the field than he is on. And that's only going to take him to new heights, right? So that type of stuff carries onto the field, right? His film work, his preparation, the way he practices, the way he is in the locker room, the type of teammate that he is, the way that he treats his boys, his coaches, the respect he gives to the trainers. I mean, God, you can't teach that, right? And it's really impressive at such a young age, right, that he's doing this. So, I think the world of him, and I'm excited to see what he does down the road.
I think right now, among the fan base, there's a lot of noise around head coach, Coach Locksley. And I think that's understandable when you're on a 5-game losing streak. However, from your perspective, what do you think has been some fair criticism of Coach Locksley, and what do you think hasn't been?
That's a loaded question. I've seen Locksley. I've seen Coach Locksley behind closed doors. I've seen how he treats his players. I've seen how he treats his staff. I've seen how he coaches. And not only coaches like coaching me back in, 2001, 2002, right? As a running backs coach, but I've seen him as a head coach as well, over the last handful of years. Right. And I see how he prepares and puts his team first. He puts his guys first, right? He's going to battle for his guys. He's going to battle for his coaches. And are there criticisms out there about, some play callings and some decisions? Yeah, sure. Does that all fall on him? No, right? I mean, you got a staff, right? That's why you have a staff around you to help you make those decisions, right? But he's won a national title, right? He's called an offense. He's won at the highest level, and there's no reason that he can't do that here at Maryland, right? And I get people are upset, but just remember, like I said it before, Maryland is 5 minutes away from being 7-0. Like, think about that, right? It went the other way, and we're all upset about that, right? And we want to point the finger and point the blame, but Locks has done all the right things for the last few years. He's got the dudes in the facility, right? Does he have the depth? No, not yet, but he's on his way to getting that depth. So, I'm a Locks believer, right? A lot of people are upset with that, especially right now, coming off a Rutgers loss. But, I truly think that if he's able to secure that locker room and keep that locker room tight, they can go to new heights, right? And it's just a matter of doing that.
I think the main concern, other fans are saying is just at what point does that not matter anymore after how many seasons? And I think that what you're saying is fair. They are a couple plays away from, having one of the best seasons in recent memory, but it also comes to a certain point where, if this happens many seasons in a row, then it's hard to justify. That's I think my perspective.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, look, it's fans are upset, right? Rightfully so. And there's one person that you point the blame at, and it's Coach Locksley because he's at the top. And I get all that, right? And it's again, it's hard to win, not only in college, right? The game of college football, it's hard to win in the Big Ten, but it's also damn hard to win in College Park, right? Because of just the type of football program that we have been over the last hundreds of years, right? Like we're a city program, right? Like we don't sell out and get 90,000 in College Park every single weekend, right? We have to win in order to bring those fans to the Shell, right? Is that fair? I don't know. It is what it is, right? You're not in an environment where you have a ton of support, right? But when you lose, you're going to hear about it for sure, right? And that's where we are right now. We're hearing about it. We're losing. We're not putting W's on the board, and people are upset with Locksley, and that's understandable. Do I have confidence in Locksley? Yeah, I do. Right? Am I frustrated watching the TV with my kids too? Yeah, I get pissed off. I get frustrated. There's some calls that are questionable, right? And there's only one finger to point and one person to blame, right? And that's Coach Locksley, right? Is that fair? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But I do think that he has the tools to succeed at this level, and it's just a matter of him figuring out a way to get it done. What are those answers? I don't know, right? Like I'm here in my home office working today. I'm not behind closed doors. I'm not in those meetings. I'm not prepping for game plan. I don't know what that answer is, but I do know that he's got a great roster, right? And he's continuing to build, and those players love him, and he'll continue to move forward. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens this off season, and I agree to you to an extent. And I think you also got to look at where this program was when Locksley took over in his first 2 years. Year one, the program was reeling off the death of Jordan McNair, so no coach was going to succeed in that situation. Then number
Correct.
two, second year was the COVID year, so another really tough year for him to go through. Then you get the 3 straight bowl wins, and now we're in a little 2-year lull right now. So I think you got to wait it out, see what happens next year. You got Zion Ely coming in, and anyways, I mean, this is an off season where so many head coaching jobs are open. I just don't know who you could hire with where Maryland would be in the pecking order.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. Who are you going to bring in, right? And it's got to be a diamond in the rough, right? Or, a big-time name. But does the big-time name get it done? I don't know. Can Tom Brady win at FedEx Field for the Commanders? Probably not, right? It's just a matter of right fit, right place, right time. And I do know that to your point, Mike, like Locksley was he was the right fit, right? After the Jordan McNair death. He was the right fit for the program. He bleeds Terp pride. He loves College Park. And that hasn't changed, right? And that won't change. Yeah. But, when times get tough, everybody wants to point the finger, and that's kind of where we are right now, unfortunately. But, look, we've got a few games remaining, right? If you can find out a way to win a few of those games, right? Where do the chips fall? Who knows?
To close this interview out, I want to give you a chance to kind of talk about your friend Tim Strachan, who passed away this past summer. If listeners don't know, he was a former DeMatha quarterback, top 5 in the country heading into his senior year, and was paralyzed in a diving accident a week before his senior season began. He went on to go to the University of Maryland and joined the broadcasting team with Johnny and Scott and called Terps games with them. So, Scott, just kind of what do you want to be remembered about Tim?
Yeah, thank you for that, Mike. Yeah, Tim was somebody that I looked up to for a long time. And when I say a long time, we used to vacation with the Strachans, Bethany Beach. And when I was a little guy, I would look up to him on the beach, right? his size, the way he threw the football, the way he ran. I followed his high school career. I went to DeMatha games, and I wanted to go to DeMatha because of Tim Strachan, right? It didn't work out for me early on because of just my size and kind of where I lived. And I didn't think I had the talent to compete at that high level like Tim Strachan did, right? It took a win my sophomore year to beat DeMatha to be like, shoot, you know what? I probably could have followed his footsteps. And that gave me the confidence to transfer to DeMatha. And I really wanted to be a Stag because of Tim Strachan. And I was so close to him growing up as a little kid to really follow him in his high school, in his career at Maryland, and then having him call my games when I was a Terp. That was special to me. Our bond just only got tighter. And then after I stopped playing professional football, then I joined him in the booth. And that was when, for those few years of me being in the booth with Tim and Johnny, I really got to see a different side of him that I didn't know. I knew of, but I never experienced, right? The way that he prepped every single day, the way that he got, ready for the day, the way that he maneuvered throughout the day, the way that he, got to games, and the way that he traveled, the way that he treated his body, the way that he prepped for a game, and the way that he called a game. Like, it was truly amazing to me to see that, because look, there are many days that we feel down, right? We feel down and out. We feel stressed. We feel, a little bit of depression sinking in, right? Anxiety, whatever it is. And to look at Tim and the way that he treated every single day, it's like, man, this dude has it worse than me, and he is on cloud nine. And that's how he operated. And I really tried to model myself and my life after him, and the way, and I tried to approach every single day the way that he did, right? And I think I learned a ton from Tim, and just how he carried himself as a professional, as a family man, as a father, as a friend. And I still today, man, I try to model myself after him. I think about him on a daily basis, and he'll never be forgotten. So Tim was one of the best to ever do it in all areas of life, and he always will be.
Well, we appreciate you sharing that, and we also really appreciate your time talking about Maryland football. So thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
And that was a great interview with Scott. But like we talked about with Scott, the Terps had another rough loss this past Saturday, losing at Rutgers 35-20. It was probably the offensive's worst performance of the year, which is crazy to say considering they had their best rushing performance, which has been their biggest weakness. But if you watched the game, the offense struggled the whole time. They did not score a touchdown in the second half. Sam, what did you see when you watched the Terps game?
Well, Mike, I wasn't in Piscataway like you were, but I do know that was probably not the worst loss that Maryland's had this season, but I would say the most disheartening one. I think that it's just another sign that weeks ago when we kind of talked, Locksley said, I know this team isn't like same old Maryland because they're not going to crumble and this isn't going to turn into the script of last year. I mean, I think it's been proven that he was very wrong about that statement. I think this team hasn't rediscovered kind of the wins on the margins that they were getting early in the year. And I think it's been proven now through a few weeks that they're in this kind of cycle and pit of mediocrity, and even worse than mediocrity at this point. I think you saw just game-wise, you saw Malik Washington really struggle through the air. I think he played well with his legs, the big run, obviously. They dialed him up in the QB run game a little more, but bad interception. Just, again, even on a day when the running game had, their best game of the year, I think the numbers are a little bit skewed because of Washington's 76-yard touchdown run, but they've put so much on the freshman quarterback's plate, and I kept saying this at the beginning of the year. Malik Washington is still a freshman quarterback. He is going to make mistakes. They're showing up now, and I think it's costing, this team, but that's nobody's fault other than the man, who's leading the job, and that's Michael Locksley, because he built this team to have to rely on Malik Washington so much. He built this team to where we're now guaranteed another sub 500 record in Big Ten play, an annual tradition now under Mike Locksley. And they're at a point where, barring a upset over Illinois or Michigan, they're going to miss a bowl game for the second straight year, and I would not be surprised if this team loses out. I don't think that there's a ton of juice left, and I think that's going to raise serious questions. We've talked all year about Mike Locksley's job security. If they were to lose out, I don't see any way that you can justify bringing him back at this point. And I think that, that's a large conversation, and we can get into it more by the end of the season. But right now, as it stands, I think this is as dire as the program has looked in quite some time.
Yeah, you kind of hit it on the head there with the offense. I will say this about the defense. The defense has not looked great the past 2 weeks now against Illinois, not against Illinois, against Indiana, and then against Rutgers. But at the same time, I do somewhat agree with Locksley to an extent about the injuries this team has. He said plenty of times early on in the year, this team does not have the depth to deal with injuries, and Zahir Mathis barely played against Rutgers. Sidney Stewart barely played against Rutgers. Daniel Wingate has been playing on one leg since the UCLA game where he exited early.
Was Rutgers healthy? From what I understand, Rutgers has a lot of injuries as well. No.
I mean, good teams would be.
It's like injuries are a silly argument. I hate to be that guy.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, the defense did carry them for over half the games, and now you look at the performance. I don't really think I'm going to fault the defense too much for this loss. I think it falls more so on the offense, and like you said, Sam, Malik Washington is just doing way too much right now, and you can see when he plays, he's speeding himself up at times where I feel like he doesn't have to. The fourth down call, Locksley went aggressive. I believe this was in the second quarter. It might have been in the third. He goes for it on fourth twice that drive. They get it the first time. Then it's 4th and 1 inside Rutgers territory. They get a first down there. It would have been huge. And it was actually a good play call by Pep and Locksley, but Malik just overthrows, I believe it was DeJohn Williams on that play. And the Terps turn it over on downs. And that's going to be your end result when you have a freshman doing just way too much, way more than he needs to. I mean, he finished a game with the second most rushing yards by quarterback in Maryland history. Yes, a lot of those came on those 2 chunk runs. But you can't rely on Malik to do everything. And Sam, you foresaw this happening.
Yeah. And I think that, Mike, it is a fair point about injuries, but before this season, Locksley crowed and talked about how much better the program's depth was, how, we've built this up to where we have guys that we trust across the positions. Their defensive back room, they said, was deeper. They said their D-line room was deeper. They said
he's backtracking.
They said the roster is now in a win now style approach. Well, if we're going to talk about winning now and we want to shift the program to be a more pro-style program, I hate to break it to you, NFL teams, they don't care how many injuries you have. The Giants have suffered a ton of injuries this season. They just fired their head coach. Not to bring it to the news of the day, but the Mavericks fired Nico Harrison, obviously different circumstances. They've dealt with a ton of injuries. There is a certain lack of accountability, I think, that Michael Locksley has taken for this season, and I think he's backtracked, like you said, Mike.
He definitely has.
On what has happened. I mean, in the postgame, sitting there and saying, we've improved in penalties is crazy. They've gone from, 3rd worst to 4th worst in the conference?
Yes, it was 3rd worst to 4th worst.
And then you're going to try to justify before the game even that a second win in the Big Ten would be progress. Slow progress, but progress. You're in year 8. 2 wins in the Big Ten is not good enough.
Yeah.
And it's just gotten to a point now to where you can try to sit there and say fans have raised the expectations because how this team played through the first 4 games of the season. Well, on the flip side, you've lowered the expectations. So if you have fans who are expecting a better product from their team and a coach who's trying to lower the expectations, that's not a good relationship that you're in. It should be the opposite way around, right? The coach should be expecting more and fans should be, and that's just not at the point where it's at. And I think
it is very weird. Locksley's backtracked so many times. Look at the best is ahead. He dropped that. He's saying the best is now. And like you said, they're in a win now mode for this program. And then last week he's talking about, well, player development is the reason I'm here. That's the most important thing in my job. Well, I thought it wasn't a developmental program anymore. Now you're saying player development is the most important thing that you do. He he contradicts himself a lot.
Mike, you've sat in these press conferences. Why do you think he keeps saying this weird thing of, I won't evaluate the team until the end of the season? It seems like a very cop-out answer, and I think it's probably because he knows the answer. What do you make of that?
He doesn't want to say to the fans to let the team overhear it that he says they haven't met expectations. Or at least, like he says, the expectations that this young group gave themselves with the way they played early. He's repeated that many times now, that there's a difference between progress and expectations. And that 4-0 start and the way that young core was playing set expectations for themselves later on in the year, which they clearly have not met. He also said another interesting thing in the post-game press conference, which I thought was a little bit crazy because you technically can still make a bowl game. You need to win 2 games. You have 3 left. Yes, Illinois and Michigan are tough games, but the message of saying, I told the young guys in the locker room, we're now at the point of playing for pride and playing for our older veterans who don't have a lot of football left. It feels like he's just kind of like, all right, season's over. Like we've got nothing else to play for. That's just not the case. I don't know if that was the correct message to kind of say there.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike.
It's just very odd because you're exactly right. This team could win 7 games in the regular season. It's not going to happen, but if you're the head coach, you should go into every game thinking you can win that game. And I just think, saying, "Oh, we're just doing it for the seniors," it's like that. If you want to kill a fan base, there we go.
Lowering the expectations. That's the whole point I'm trying to make. Is this coach has sat up there in press conferences time after time again and tried to backtrack and change. It's like, not to say he's gaslighting you, but he's basically like saying that it's like, okay, fans, I was telling you through 4 weeks, this is one of the best freshman core. Malik Washington doesn't play like a freshman quarterback. This team is ready to win now. All that type of stuff. And as soon as it doesn't go your way, you're shifting expectations and then saying that fans did that. It's like, no, you did that. You contributed to that. And that's the biggest thing that's frustrating to I think fans and just watching it unfold. We can get into more of what the future of this program is later on. I don't want to, I think that the buyout is still looms large over Maryland. You had the Baltimore Sun's Taylor Lyons report that, boosters may not be willing to pay that type of money. The buyout is right now, if they were to fire him before December 1st, it would be around $13 million. Which is not that much money, and it's crazy that Maryland can't cough that up, in my opinion. But and then the other thing, the other element that I'm looking at is there's just a lot of high profile jobs open. I mean, you have LSU, Florida, Penn State, Virginia Tech, Stanford, Arkansas, Oklahoma State. Those are all just some that come to mind. It's going to be a crazy coaching cycle. But I leave you with this. 2 years ago, Indiana was in kind of the same situation as Maryland, right? Tom Allen, the former head coach, had raised the program to a better place than where he was when he took it. And I think it's undeniable that Michael Locksley has brought Maryland to a better place than where it was when he took it over. There's no question. He's produced NFL picks. He had 3 bowl game wins in a row, and there's been no major scandals off the field while he's been the coach. He loves Maryland. He's clearly been a good representative for the school. On the other hand, Tom Allen and Michael Locksley had a lot of the same things. They endured a couple of losing seasons. The program didn't seem like there was a path back to winning and relevant winning. They fired Tom Allen and hired Curt Cignetti. 2 years later, they're the number 2 team in the country and are on the brink of their 2nd straight college football playoff. Not every hire is going to be Curt Cignetti. You'd be crazy to think that Maryland is just going to find the next, gem like that. But I think any of these coaching candidates that Maryland could potentially bring in would bring some positive juice to a program that so desperately needs some sort of forward momentum. And I don't really see a path to getting that with Locksley as your head coach.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. We don't have to talk about the Illinois game in depth this season. Just a quick little overview of what's going on. The Illini started the season off ranked very highly. I believe they are a top 10 team in the country in the preseason poll. They've dropped 3 games so far this year. They did beat USC, which was number 17 at the time, but have losses against Ohio State, Washington, and Indiana. Heading into this game, Illinois averages 33 points per game, gets nearly 400 yards per game as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that Terps offense, which did not look good last week, performs against a decent the Terps defense that did not perform well last week performs against a pretty good Illinois offense. Got through that. Real quick, if we all just want to go around and just give predictions for this game, I got the Terps losing, let's say 30
Is this
to
the first
20.
time you've picked them losing, other than the Indiana game?
I think
Yeah,
so.
you might be right. You might be right. Yeah.
I don't think I picked them to win. No, I picked them to beat Rutgers. But I'm going to stay on the losing train. I think it's going to be a blowout. I'll go 37-17 Illinois.
I think Illinois is a team that's similar to the likes of Washington and Nebraska, which we saw Maryland compete with earlier in the year, but it's the same unraveling we've seen in the last 3 years of Locksley. They have a pretty tragic loss, and then they just cannot get the train back on the tracks. I will take Illinois 35 to Maryland 10.
All right, awesome. So there's our picks for the Illinois game. Shifting to men's basketball, which had a pretty heartbreaking and disappointing loss for some fans Friday, losing the Gold Rush game, your first big home game under Buzz Williams. They lost to Georgetown 70-60. I was there in the stadium watching the game. From my point of view, this team needs some shooters badly next year. They cannot shoot the ball. Darius Adams plays like a freshman. I thought he was forcing a lot of shots he didn't need to take. And outside of Pharrell Payne, I just don't know who is a reliable option on offense. Especially,
Pharrell Payne also looked gassed at the end of the game.
Yeah, he looked gassed, and he got most of his points from the foul line too.
Which I will say, if he continues to shoot free throws at that level, he's going to be.
I'll take it.
I'll
take it.
He was 13 for 15 from the free throw line. Someone his size, that is very impressive. Him being able to get to the line, I mean, that was the majority of the offense. That game was just ugly from both perspectives.
You know what's not impressive, Brendan? Getting to the line 35 times and losing the game.
Yeah, they thought Maryland shot 37 free throws and Georgetown shot 31. I mean, just 68 free throws in a basketball game when there's it's literally just a tough watch, honestly.
25% from the field, 19% from three. I mean, it's not good enough. 10 offensive rebounds. They tied Georgetown. That's supposed to be this team's calling card, Buzz Williams' calling card. You know, I don't want to overreact too early. I think Georgetown could legitimately be a tournament team. I think they're solid. But that type of brand of basketball, I think Mike said it, like, there isn't really a path to a reliable offensive weapon. There's not, like, Miles Rice could get better, like, as the year goes on. He was fine. Like, you know, he's the team's leading scorer with 19 points.
It's his first game of the year, too. Like,
solid.
It's early.
But I don't really see, like, where this team is going to get, like, this surprise shooting. Like, you're not going to – Darius Adams will get better as the year goes on. He's not going to go 1 for 6 from the field and 3 points the whole night. I think Miles Rice will be fine. But I just don't really see, like, a ton of paths to offensive success for this group. And that was the biggest concern I had coming into the year.
Yeah.
I think if they're going to win, it's going to have to be ugly games that they just kind of grind out and are able to kind of to dominate glass, you know, that type of thing.
It's the classic defensive line. If they allow more than 65 points, they probably don't win. Solomon Washington will help defensively. He was obviously out. But, I mean, like, Diggy Court going 2 for 9 from 3. Like, that's not – him shooting 9 threes in a game is not a recipe to winning.
Yeah, man, did that suck to watch Malik Mack go off against Maryland.
That was the biggest issue with this game. I felt that the Georgetown team, Mack and DHS and the other DMV guys they have on the team, if you looked over at their bench, they felt that it was a rivalry game. They wanted to beat Maryland. No one on Maryland's from here. They don't really care. Oh, Georgetown, it could have been Georgetown. It could have been Tennessee. It could have been Florida. It could have been UCLA. It wouldn't really have mattered for the Maryland bench because to them it's not a rivalry game, and I don't fault them for that. None of them are from here. It's a rivalry game because that's how rivalries work. You can't just throw a different team into a rivalry game and hope that it's a rivalry.
That's fair. I don't think that's the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue is that they made the fewest amount of shots that they've done in the past 10 years. I mean, I get what you're saying, Brendan. I think that there were some, you know, DHS clearly brought a ton of intensity to that game as we kind of all expected. Mac played well. But I think that they played hard. I mean, like, they kept themselves in it despite playing as bad as they did offensively. It's just that I don't really see a ton of path to offensive success, and I don't really know where that's gonna come. And
Rodney Rice ain't walking through that door, you know?
no, exactly.
And he's a dang good shooter.
You look at the rest of this non-conference schedule, and all of a sudden, like, at Marquette this weekend, like, that's not a game that I think Maryland's gonna win. Like, I know Marquette's 2-1, and this is not the same Marquette team that, made it to the NCAA tournament. They just gave up 100 points to Indiana. But I don't think that Maryland's walking into Milwaukee and pulling that game out. Then you have to go to Vegas, and you're playing UNLV and number 19 Gonzaga. Like, I think there's a legitimate chance this team goes 1-3 and maybe 0-4. And then that kind of, like, you're 0-4 and those games are 1-3. You really got to make up some work in the Big Ten play to even think about making the tournament. So
yeah. I wouldn't sound the five-alarm fire yet. Maryland lost to Marquette earlier in the year. I just think it's how they've looked offensively. This team's MO is going to have to be playing a very strong game defensively, and if they do that, they can definitely beat Marquette. They can definitely beat UNLV. It's just the lack of offensive consistency that we've seen so far is concerning.
Yeah. How about Guillermo Del Pino starting the game, then immediately exiting and never coming back in?
Does anybody know why that happened?
Yeah, what was up with that?
He had that really bad turnover.
Yeah, and then Buzz was like, he's not seeing the court again. Maybe for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I doubt it, but who knows? I mean, we're recording this Tuesday. Maybe he'll start again tonight. He started every game. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, guys, they're shooting 28% from three through the first two games of the season. Like, and do we think that number is going to get above 31, 32%? I don't know.
I was wrong about the 3-point shooting.
Isaiah Watts and Diddy Court got to find it.
Yeah, Isaiah Watts I think will get better. I'm blaming the mask for his 3-point shooting woes. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Marquette this Saturday. Briefly touched on it. The Golden Eagles just lost to Indiana by 23 points. They bring back some okay players. Shaka Smart always has the kind of that staple defense that he likes to play. Not the press as much anymore, but just kind of that pressure man-to-man style. This team came into Xfinity Center last year and won. It's not the same roster. Not really at all. You have really the only returners from last year's team is Ben Gold, who played solid in that game, but not as good of a roster this year. Chase Ross has stepped up and is averaging 19 points a game. So he'll be kind of the main guy to watch out for. That game will be played on Saturday. Really quick, Brendan, if there's anything that you would watch from this game other than 3-point shooting that would give you more confidence in Maryland's season moving forward, what would you kind of label that thing to be?
It's simple, but it's offensive rebound. Obviously, you saw Marquette give up a ton of points against Indiana. And as you said, that's supposed to be what Buzz Williams and this team is going to rely on. So I think them establishing a presence again on the offensive glass, if they do that, there's a serious path for them beating this Marquette team. I don't think this Marquette team is that good, especially defensively, which could give Maryland a good chance to kind of get those wheels going against a worse, but obviously strong Big East team.
Yeah.
I would.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say just shot creation. Who can create their own shot? I thought Miles Rice probably looked the best at that against Georgetown, but the ball movement was not there. I felt like too many times guys were dribbling into double teams, then passing it back out, and then repeating the process. I want to see people create their own shot and get this offense going.
Definitely. On the defensive end, I would say just playing without fouling. I mean, it was ugly to watch against Georgetown. You got to play straight up defense, and obviously that's something Buzz Williams knows they have to work on, but that's another thing I would look out for. Just playing solid D without fouling.
Yeah. Big game this Saturday, so we'll be tuning into that. I think I'll probably be watching that game instead of Illinois, Maryland.
They're in the same they're in similar locations, but you probably can't make it to both.
Yeah. What time is football, Mike?
3:30.
3:30 game? Well, it's 2, I think, right?
It's a good weekend to sit on your couch and put on a football and a basketball game Maryland are playing in. Who knows what will happen with the results, but you can watch both at the same time.
Maryland might lose both. So
yeah.
But at least you can watch both at the same time. That doesn't happen all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Doubleheader.
Yeah. Anyway,
be good double screen day.
Yeah.
We're talking about the lack of offensive creation for the men's side. The women also took on Georgetown, and someone who can create offense, that's Addie Mack. What do you guys think of her fourth quarter performance? She went off.
Return of the Mac. Return of the Mac. She's looking pretty good early on. The freshman guard from Minnesota playing scored 17 of her 23 points in the fourth quarter. Maryland trailed in that game for most of the contest, which I was surprised by, but really stormed back in the fourth quarter, and I think kind of established the team that we expect them to be. I think that the biggest positive, you mentioned it, Brendan, if Addie Mack can be a legitimate perimeter creator, like this team has got something there. She's a great scorer. She was a great scorer in high school. I came across a stat that during her senior season, guys, at Minnesota, not at Minnesota, but in Minnesota, she was the number one active scorer across the nation in high school basketball. Like, that's crazy to me. She's a dog. Her finishing and creation is really, really critical for a team that, outside of Kayleen Smeichel, like, they don't have a ton of people who can get their own shot in one-on-one. They have a lot of good players, but, like, Yarden Garzone isn't going and creating her own shot, right? Like, Taylor Poffenbarger, same thing. Mac can do that. And I think it means a lot for this rotation and this guard play if she can kind of be a go-to scorer in the crunch.
Also, they need her and they need Smeichel to get to the rim to allow defenders to collapse, to kick out for Poffenbarger to hit threes and for Garzone to hit threes. When that starts happening, that's when this offense is going to be lethal. But we haven't really seen that yet. I think because, Smeichel been out, and Bree McDaniel, if she returns, those are the type of players you need for this offense to work. Everybody else on the team, I just agree with you, Sam. It's hard for them to get downhill.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. Now they have that was going to be their toughest non-conference game, and they obviously came out on top. So now they have a pretty easy slate here before they head out to the Dominican. So you got
Puerto Rico, but sure.
Puerto Rico, sorry. I always get that's my apologies. They play Towson at home. Towson always just kind of a beat-up game for Maryland. Then they play Princeton on Sunday, which should be a better game. But I'm not really looking at either of those as much challenges. So I'd imagine Maryland goes 2-0 in those two games and kind of keeps chugging along until they get to that game against Kentucky at the end of November. So, that's it for women's hoops.
All right, the biggest story, somehow we're 20 minutes into this episode on our part, and we haven't got to it. Men's soccer finishes the regular season undefeated. The number one team in the country, the number one seed in the Big Ten and the Big Ten tournament, which will be hosted in College Park on Wednesday. There's just a semifinal this year. They kind of change how they do that tournament every year, but Washington plays Michigan in the first semifinal, which is 4 o'clock in College Park, and then Maryland takes on UCLA at 7. Let's backtrack 1 second and talk about that incredible Michigan State game that led Maryland to this point. Saddam Mazreika scores a hat trick within 15 minutes in the first half. All between like the 20th and 40th minute. It's funny. The first goal he created for himself was a shot off from the right side to the left side of the goalkeeper, kept it low. And the other two was just right place, right time. It's kind of who he's been this season. Got 2 more to go off rebounds and then had an assist on the goal that iced the game. Stefan GK put that one in to make it 4-2. And then Michigan State ended up scoring to make it the final score 4-3. But needless to say, this team's offensive power is just, it's what's carried them, and it was on full display in a Michigan State game where Michigan State battled back. And, although Maryland was in the lead, it never totally felt like they had this game, secured and tied up. But the craziest stat in this entire regular season, I mean, regardless of what happens in this postseason, Sasha deserves a lot of credit for how he's coached this team. They've trailed for less than 2 minutes the entire regular season.
Crazy.
That is unbelievable, and kudos to him and the whole staff. That is very impressive. And as I've said all year, I can't believe it took them this long to get ranked. I can't believe it took them this long to get to the top of the rankings. They have never the entire season looked like a team that was going to lose the game. I mean, the Michigan State game, obviously they battled back, but Maryland has looked in control of every game they've played. That's my point. And as I've said, nobody wants to play them. They'll face UCLA coming up. One of the games they actually did not win this season. It was a draw out in California. It was a bit of an uglier game, more of a possession game. Both teams only had 2 shots on net, but I would expect Maryland at home against a UCLA team who has looked better in the final weeks of the season to face a real test, but get the job done.
Yeah, Masareka, Aiden Curry of the Diamondback reported that it was the first time in over 20 years that a Maryland player scored a hat trick in the first half of a game. That's absurd to me. Shout out Masareka. And yeah, Brendan, I think you nailed it on the head. Just I'm really impressed by the kind of not rebuild, but the revamp that Sasha's done after last season. And I think this team's primed more than kind of any team in the country to add some hardware. I expect them to beat UCLA, and then it'll either be Michigan or who are the other teams on the side of the bracket, Brendan, in the Big Ten tournament?
It'll be Michigan against Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Both teams that have been ranked out most of the year. That Maryland, luckily enough, got at home. But I think Maryland having home field advantage is huge in this tournament because they're facing UCLA, has to come all the way across the country. Washington, who just made a trip 2 weeks ago to come all the way to College Park from across the country, and also Michigan. I mean, it matters when especially that Washington team. I would expect Michigan to win that game just because of how much travel they've done in the past couple of weeks. It always helps to have, that home feel. And even going back before UCLA was in the Big Ten, that's always kind of been a rivalry game for Maryland men's soccer. So I expect people know that. I expect Ludwig to be a pretty hype environment, especially I think, people who are big Maryland sports fans around here. Football team, obviously, as we've talked about, has not been that exciting. Men's basketball after the Gold Rush game, I think, it's funny, around campus, I'm hearing more chatter about the men's soccer team than I genuinely think ever before. And I think Sasha's probably super pleased with that. But I think that, it's going to come down to what it's come down to all year for this Maryland team, which is controlling possession and just getting shots on net. And I would expect them to take care of the UCLA game. And then, they've looked strong all year, but Big Ten championship game is going to be tough. I would expect them, if I had to make a prediction, I would say I think they win the Big Ten championship at home and get to celebrate. But at the end of the day, going undefeated for the entire season is a bit unrealistic. So if they do drop a game, it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's these are really just 2 extra games you get to play in a tournament, and resting up for the NCAA tournament, which obviously matters more, wouldn't be the end of the world. But they're gonna have a lot of home games if they keep winning.
Yeah, definitely. It's another awesome season for Sasha, and I'm really excited to see what's going on. Team who I think, like the other kind of standard for fall sports in Maryland athletics, the field hockey team, dismal end to the season. First time they missed the tournament since 1994. They're left out of the NCAA.
Not including that COVID year, but yeah.
They're left out of the NCAA year. Fall out in the Big Ten tournament to Ohio State early. I mean, this team, I don't know. In Big Ten play, the offense just never felt good enough. And I mean, if you look at all the losses this season, they all kind of fell in the similar script: 2-1, 1-0, 2-0. Like 3-1. They were all offensive failures at its core, and I think that that's just kind of the main message from this season is the offense wasn't good enough, and it wasn't good enough all season. They let down, I think, a championship caliber defense, a championship caliber season from their goalie, Alyssa Kolasko.
Absolutely.
They didn't do enough to kind of construct a roster, and the young players that they were relying on so much this season, I don't think ever really gelled enough and quickly enough.
You said it. They were probably 2 or 3 offensive pieces away from being able to contend for a national title. I don't know when the last time it happened is, if it's ever happened, but the fact that they never allowed more than 2 goals a game the entire season, I would be shocked to think that's happened consistently before. I mean, obviously they've had a lot of good teams here, but the defensive play was unbelievable. And the inability to, throughout the year, generate offenses, we knew it, but what ended up killing this team. And even if they had gone far, you would have said, they always have a chance in a game because it's very realistic they win this game 1-0. I mean, it almost happened against Northwestern. They were up 1-0 for a lot of the game, and then the defense kind of faltered in the second half. But the defense kept them in so many games because 1-goal game, 2-goal game, heading into the fourth. Obviously, anything can happen, but I think disappointing is probably the word. But it's hard when you have 2 sides of the game that they just played very differently.
It's just a disappointing end to the year for Maharg and company. The team that's nearing another kind of failure of a season is the volleyball squad. They are kind of limping. Is that I don't feel like that's enough of an adjective to describe how bad it's been recently. 0-2 weekend, and now they play 4 ranked matchups in a row.
They needed to really beat Northwestern, Ohio State, or Michigan.
And they didn't.
And they didn't. And you now got to play the number 9, 18, 20, and 24 team in the country.
Yeah, and Adam Hughes has not had a ranked win here in a
3 of those are on the road.
Yeah. And then you have to play Washington and Oregon to finish the year. So you got to go, you got to play 2 West opponents. I think that game's at home, though, right, Brendan?
Those games are at home, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the Pavilion will be rocking for the potential to clinch your 3rd Big Ten win of the year.
Oregon and Washington are lower on they're like near the bottom of the Big Ten standings, but still, I mean, above Maryland, obviously.
Yeah, well, not many teams are below them.
No, well, in fact, none of them are in the Big Ten standings.
If you put the number, Brendan, this is a good question. I think if you put the number at 1.5 coaching changes from the fall sports that we've talked about all year, would you land on the over or under there?
Boy, there are some coaches you just know aren't going anywhere.
Well, so this isn't just firing. Like, this is like they retire or leave too.
Okay. I could see a world if men's soccer wins the national championship that Sasha says see ya and rides off into the sunset. He would kind of accomplish his last goal. We talked to him obviously about some other goals and reshaping the sport and getting a spring season, but none of that really matters. I think that's a realistic possibility. If he wins, he just rides off into the sunset, which would be pretty cool. I think if they don't win, I don't think he does that. Missy Mahard, I think she's going to stay through her end of her contract. She obviously has talked about nearing the end of her time, so she has a couple years left on that. So I don't think she's going to be gone either, but these are 2 very realistic possibilities. Marciano is not going anywhere. It's his 2nd year. I'd be shocked if he leaves. Maybe he gets, I wouldn't see him leaving. And then you look at Locksley and Hughes, and I'd be shocked if both those coaches are still here. I'd be shocked. I think it's more likely to make a move on the football end. So I will take the under just because I don't think they would fire both volleyball and football. We've talked about the aspect of firing the volleyball coach. I kind of agree. What's the point of giving? It's kind of the same Locksley argument. Like, there's no reason to give him one more year at this point. But I'll take the under. I'll definitely take 1. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the over. I think Locksley and Hughes, I don't think last beyond this year. But it'll be a question that I think Jim Smith will have to answer for sure.
Yeah, I just my pulse on the volleyball coaching market is not as tapped in as the football coaching market. It's just harder to know.
Yeah.
And they've been this way the past 4 years-ish, not totally, but struggling in Big Ten play. And so, obviously Damon Evans didn't make a move, but, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's very, very possible they're both gone. It's very possible 3, but I'll take the under.
Yeah.
That's why it's a good line.
Yeah, it is. Let's move off of that and talk real quick, just some brief updates. Maryland baseball released their schedule, so that's out for 2026. The Dirty Terps play some marquee non-conference games this year, West Virginia and Virginia, so that'll be fun to watch. Wrestling, they have another big weekend series coming up before they kind of start to kick into their year.
Low-key, they probably have the coolest thing of anybody this weekend. They're playing, or they're doing, kind of a round-robin style again, but it's on the USS Yorktown.
Yeah, I know.
It's sick. Honestly, maybe you do a triple box and turn into that as well when you're watching football and basketball. And I don't know what else you could throw on the weekend, but maybe you got another college football game. What a quad box!
I know. Get the quad box going.
USS Yorktown wrestling, Maryland football against Illinois, basketball against Marquette, and then throw on a top 25 matchup in football, and you have yourself a Saturday.
Yeah. And that's kind of it for winter sports. We'll talk more about gymnastics and all that when they get going. But yeah, hopping off of this and let's give our college football picks for the week.
I went 1-2 on the weekend, but I'm still in the lead, so I'll start us off. I'm interested in the Duke UVA game, but I don't know who to pick, so I'll take the over. Then I got Georgia Tech minus 16.5 against BC and Louisville minus 3 against Clemson. Mike Howes, what do you got for us?
This week I'm going South Carolina, Texas A&M over 48.5 points. I got Indiana covering the spread against Wisconsin by 29.5 points. And then Georgia Tech, 16.5 point favorites at Boston College. BC has not been good this year. Bill O'Brien went crazy on a reporter the other week. So I think that's a good game for Georgia Tech.
Yeah. I have Pitt plus 11.5 against Notre Dame. Did you guys see Narduzzi's comments? He was like, I don't care if they beat us by 100. It's not an ACC game. I think that's a little gamesmanship. I expect the Panthers to play well on that. Give me Pitt plus 11.5. This is a tough one. I like the over in the Alabama Oklahoma game. It's 45.5. I think both those offenses will get going. So give me Alabama, Oklahoma over. And then lastly, I'm going to go Iowa plus 6.5 against USC. I rode Iowa in the last game, and they delivered for me. So give me Iowa plus 2.5 or plus 6.5 against USC.
All right. I like all our picks. Should be a fun weekend to watch.
And now Brendan can finish this out with Terrific Terp. Brendan, I'm imagining Michael Locksley is not this week's nomination, but let's hear.
This is, I do feel a little bad. It is about a football coach, but you guys should strap in. This is a very long Terrific Terp. Just, maybe grab a coffee before you listen to this one. There has been, as I said, a lot of talk about coaches in College Park, so I thought a former Maryland defensive coordinator in the likes of Don Brown should be this week's Terrific Terp. This man only spent 2 years at Maryland, but he has an absolutely wild, and I mean wild history of different stops along his coaching career. He has worked at 14 different schools and coached 3 different sports. Let me take you through what Brown has done in his career, but before I do that, let's talk about why is this Terrific Terp and talk about what he did at Maryland. He was a defensive coordinator in 2009 and 2010. The team admittedly struggled in 2009 under him, but in 2010, the team improved and only gave up 22 points a game, a number that dropped 9 points from the previous year. Brown's name was in fact mentioned in 2015 when the Terps were looking to hire a new head coach, but they obviously went with DJ Durkin. Brown's name in the football world is most well known in my home state of Massachusetts and in the New England area. For his college experience, he played fullback at Norwich University in Northfield, Vermont. Heard of it? Didn't think so. Right after that, in 1977, he took a job at Hartford High School in Vermont as a PE teacher, but also a backfield coach for the football team, and then also an assistant coach for baseball and basketball. After 2 years, still coaching football and basketball, he became the head baseball coach for his third and fourth years of his 4-year stint in Hartford. He jumped ship there of all of his roles to become a grad assistant at Dartmouth. He then spent 4 of the next 5 years there, mostly as a defensive backs coach. The 1 year he missed was when he left to become a defensive coordinator at Mansfield, which is a D2 school in Pennsylvania. Anyways, from 1987 to 1992, he was at Yale as a defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach. He also served as the interim baseball coach in 1992, where he actually led the team to an NCAA tournament while on the football coaching staff. He finally got his first head football coaching job in 1993 for Plymouth State, where the team went 25-6 in his 3 years there. Then he made stops at Brown and UMass as defensive coordinator before becoming the head coach at Northeastern in 2000. His 4 years there, he won an A-10 title, and he earned the UMass job. From 2004 to 2008, he was head coach at UMass and had a pretty successful time there. He won 2 CAA titles and lost in the NCAA championship game. Finally, in 2009, he arrived at the Terps, as I mentioned. In 2010, his defense led the Terps to a 9-win season and a bowl game win. Brown left in 2010 when Ralph Regan was fired. He then went back to the defensive coordinating role at UConn, BC, Michigan, and Arizona, all over the next 11 years. At Michigan, he had the second best defense in the country in his first year in 2016, but slowly that number got worse and worse, dropping to the 56th best defense by 2020. After his defensive coordinating experience, he once again took the UMass head coaching job. This time, it was not so easy for him. When UMass was in the FBS, and the second time he had a lot more struggles, and the team went 6-28 in his 2 2/3 season there. He left in 2024, and he is currently a consultant for the Syracuse football team. If you can't keep track of all that, it's because it is a long, long history of stops for Don Brown. The 70-year-old who had a solid Maryland defense and led them to a bowl win in 2010 is this week's Terrific Terp. Woo!
A banger, but a long one. We appreciate it. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you to you guys for tuning in and listening. Dire times in a lot of Maryland athletic sports, but if you want to keep hearing analysis on them and kind of trying to find out what the future of these programs looks like, this is the place for you to come. So we appreciate you. Enjoy your rest of your evening and have a good Saturday.
Guess what? You got Under the Shell podcast. Nobody does it better.